out in the South China Sea, or, as you note, in Taiwan, whether invading or taking other provocative action against Taiwan.
And expanding on that, Adam, President Trump has been described as a wild card or being hard to read. Some say is in itself a form of deterrence, as world leaders aren't sure what to anticipate. Now, with the changes in the Middle East, is China rethinking its plan for Taiwan?
You know, I disagree a bit with that characterization. I don't disagree that there are elements of unpredictability that President Trump purposely uses, and also that is just part of his personality. However, looking at his first term, he has a track record of judiciously using power and exhibiting deterrence. Before this a strike on Iran's nuclear facilities, what I'd always point to is another Iranian example, and that was the assassination of Soleimani, who was the head of the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which projected Iranian power around the Middle East to its subsidiaries such as Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, who of course are wreaking havoc on the Red Sea more recently. And so this strike, it didn't involve any boots on the ground. It involved relatively minimal commitment of forces, but it had a profound effect on the ability of Iran to wage war. So I point to that as an example, and he has followed up on that in this new term. Again, there's real teeth behind what he does. He really does think it through, and I think that our enemies, including China, are watching that, and they are concerned about that, not just the unpredictability.
Now, in terms of leverage, many are pointing to China's near monopoly on rare earths. Two states, Oklahoma and Missouri, are actually starting to counter Beijing's grip. Oklahoma with a nickel refinery, lithium battery plant and refinery, and aluminum plant, and Missouri with a cobalt project and another for germanium and gallium, which China restricted exports of last year. First, what do you make of these projects, and do you expect to see more states following?
What I make of them is this is wonderful progress. I mean, and this is relatively only a fraction of what we need as far as these rare earths, which are essential to a lot of our military equipment, electric vehicles, etc. But any step is a good step. And, you know, these projects are giving breathing room by the tariffs, by the disruption that China itself has wrought. Because as you point out, they have found these rare earths to be almost a unique point of leverage against the United States. We really hold the cards in this trade relationship because we buy so much more from them than they buy from us. But they've found the supply chains of the rare earths is really a sore point for us. So I'm very glad to see this in these states. And yes, it can and should pop up in other states. But you know, it's a difficult process. Like, for example, if we're talking about a greenfield investment, a new mine, new mining, new refining, this could take up to 10 years lead time to get that up and running at scale. If it's somewhere where a mine has been set up and it's waiting, ready to go, as I know there is a mine for cobalt in Idaho that is in that condition right now, perhaps that would still take 5 years to ramp up. But here's the thing. These companies need to be able to know that they're going to have contracts, defense contracts or commercial contracts. They have to be relatively secure in the price stability. And the problem is that China still has a chokehold on many of those elements. Germanium, gallium, cobalt is one I'm familiar with specifically, where they hoard cobalt. They can dump that on the market at any time to distort the prices. So, you know, for example, the government is looking at things that right of center governments are a little uncomfortable with, which is perhaps subsidies, price controls on these elements, stockpiling. These are things that are going to be needed to solidify the prices and the supply so that U.S. companies are able to help in this regard.
And Adam, this afternoon, President Trump said the U.S. signed an agreement with China on Wednesday related to trade, but he didn't specify what he was talking about. And a White House official also confirmed to NTD that the two sides have agreed to an additional understanding for a framework to implement the Geneva Trade Agreement that was reached in May. Now, according to Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, a big part of that agreement is related to China's restrictions on rare earth exports to the U.S. And if China speeds that up, the U.S. might also loosen restrictions of advanced technology in return. First, what's your reaction to this latest development?
Well, I only heard it just before we went on air, so it's new to me as well. But I mean, you know, it's expect the unexpected, and it's as I was describing to a foreign visitor earlier today. Basically, this is all new ground as far as this level of tariffing. These tactics between the two largest economies in the world, who have a huge, trade between them and